The ship called Hope of Earth dropped out of faster-than-light travel above a world made entirely of crystal. Varthex Prime sparkled in the light of 3 suns, its towers and spires reaching toward the heavens like frozen prayers. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood at the viewing window and watched the planet grow larger. She had waited her entire life for this moment. Behind her, the delegation of 50 humans prepared themselves. Scientists, diplomats, artists, and leaders. The best humanity had to offer. They wore their finest clothes and carried gifts from Earth paintings, music, technology, and hope. So much hope. "Ambassador," said Captain Rodriguez from the doorway. "We're being hailed by the Concorde security fleet." Elena turned from the window. She was 63 years old, with silver hair pulled back in a tight bun and eyes that had seen too much suffering. She had survived the border wars, the Sithrani raids, and the long years of fighting for humanity's place among the stars. Today, all of that would mean something. "Tell them we're honored to receive their welcome," she said. The Concorde security fleet surrounded them, 12 massive warships from 12 different species. Each ship was larger than anything humanity could build. Each weapon system could destroy a human colony in seconds. The message was clear. Know your place. Elena knew. But she also knew that places could change. The shuttle ride down to the planet took an hour. Elena used the time to review her speech one final time. 300 years of human history in the stars had led to this moment. 300 years of struggle, of growth, of proving themselves worthy. Today, humanity would finally be recognized as equals. The Great Hall of the Concorde was larger than most human cities. Its ceiling disappeared into darkness far above, and its walls were lined with statues of the founding species, the 12 elder races who had ruled the galaxy for longer than humans had existed. Kelvari, Sithrani, Dromaki, Velquin. Names that human children learned to fear. Thousands of aliens filled the hall, representing hundreds of species from across known space. But only 12 mattered. The 12 elder races sat on raised platforms at the far end, looking down on everyone else like gods watching insects. Elena walked the long path to the center of the hall. Her footsteps echoed in the vast space. She could feel thousands of eyes on her, some curious, some hostile, most simply indifferent. To these ancient beings, humanity was nothing. A footnote, a species that had crawled out of mud only yesterday and somehow learned to build starships. She reached the speaking platform and looked up at the Council of 12. The Kelvari Archon sat at the center, his massive insectoid body covered in ceremonial armor that had been worn by his ancestors for 10,000 years. His compound eyes reflected Elena's image 1,000 times. "You may speak, human," the Archon said. His voice was like grinding stones. Elena activated her translator and began. "Honored members of the Galactic Concorde," she said, "I come before you as the voice of 8 billion human beings. For 3 centuries, humanity has traveled among the stars. We have built colonies on 100 worlds. We have traded with your merchants, learned from your scholars, and fought beside your warriors against common threats." She paused, gathering her strength. "We have proven ourselves. We have earned our place. Today, I humbly request that humanity be granted a seat on this council, not as your superiors, not even as your equals, but as your partners in building a better galaxy." Silence fell over the hall. Elena waited, her heart pounding. She had practiced this moment 1,000 times, imagined every possible response, but nothing prepared her for what came next. The Archon made a sound. At first, Elena thought he was choking. Then she realized he was laughing. The sound spread through the hall as the other elder races joined in. The Sithrani, tall and pale with too many joints in their limbs, howled with amusement. The Dromaki, massive creatures of living stone, rumbled with mirth that shook the floor. The Velquin, beings of light and energy, pulsed with colors that meant mockery. The laughter went on and on. It filled the hall, bounced off the walls, surrounded Elena like a living thing. She stood perfectly still, her face showing nothing. Finally, the Archon raised one of his forearms, and the laughter died away. "Human," he said, still amused. "Do you understand what you are asking? Do you understand who we are?" "I understand," Elena said quietly. "I think you do not." The Archon leaned forward. "My species has ruled these stars for 40,000 years. We built empires when your ancestors were still learning to use fire. We have seen 1,000 species rise and fall. We have forgotten more than humanity will ever know. He gestured to the other elder races. The Sithrani were ancient when your planet was still molten rock. The Dromaki, remember the birth of your son. The Velquin, exist partly outside of time itself. And you clever little vermin, you dare to ask for a seat among us? Clever vermin, the Sithrani representative repeated, making the words sound like a curse. That is what they are. They scurry and breed and spread across our galaxy like a disease. Perhaps we should have stopped them when they first left their system. There is still time. The Dromaki rumbled. Confine them. Keep them in their corner of space, where they cannot cause trouble. For their own safety, of course. More laughter. The Velquin pulsed with bright amusement and spoke in their strange, harmonic voice. We should broadcast this moment across the galaxy. Let all species see what happens when vermin grow too bold. It will be educational. Elena felt the heat rising in her chest. She had expected resistance. She had expected negotiation. But this casual cruelty, this complete dismissal of everything humanity had accomplished, this was something else entirely. Ambassador, the Archon said, his voice dripping with false kindness. Go home. Tell your people to stay in their little corner of space and be grateful we allow them that much. Perhaps in another 1,000 years or 10,000, we will consider your request again, but I would not recommend holding your breath. He waved a dismissive arm. Take them away. Guards moved forward, ready to escort the human delegation out of the hall. Elena stood her ground. The laughter had died away, but the echoes of it still rang in her ears. She looked up at the Archon, at the Sithrani, at the Dromaki, at all 12 elder races who had just spat on 3 centuries of human struggle. You will remember this day, she said. Her voice was quiet, but something in it made the guards pause. The Archon tilted his massive head. Is that a threat, human? No, Elena said. It is a promise. She turned and walked out of the hall. Her delegation followed in silence. Behind them, the laughter started again, but this time, there was something uncertain in it, something that might have been the first tiny seed of doubt. The journey back to Earth took 2 weeks. Elena spent most of it alone in her quarters, staring at the walls. Her staff worried about her. They had never seen her like this, so still, so silent, so focused. When they finally reached Earth, Elena requested an immediate meeting with the United Human Government. She walked into the council chamber in Geneva, stood before the leaders of humanity, and spoke for 3 hours. She told them everything, every laugh, every insult, every casual dismissal of human worth. When she finished, the room was silent. What do you recommend? Asked President Chen, a tired man who had spent his entire career trying to secure humanity's place in the galaxy. Elena looked at him with eyes that had gone cold and hard. Close our borders, she said. Cut off all contact with the Concord and every species in it. No trade, no communication, no acknowledgement that they even exist. That would devastate our economy, someone protested. Our colonies depend on. Our colonies will adapt. Elena cut him off. Humanity has always adapted. It is what we do best. And then what? President Chen asked. We hide in our corner of space and feel sorry for ourselves? No. Elena's voice was like ice. We prepare. Prepare for what? Elena smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. They called us vermin. They laughed at everything we have accomplished. They treated us like animals to be contained and controlled. She leaned forward. I want to show them what happens when you corner an animal. I want to give them something to remember us by. She paused, letting her words sink in. I want them to know fear. The vote took place that night. It was unanimous. Within a month, humanity had withdrawn from every galactic treaty, closed every border, and silenced every communication channel with the outside galaxy. Human ships returned to human space. Human citizens came home from alien worlds. Human colonies locked their doors. The galaxy barely noticed. The elder races had already moved on to other concerns. Humanity was forgotten almost as quickly as it had been dismissed. But deep beneath the Antarctic ice, in a facility that had no name and appeared on no map, something was beginning. Dr. Yuki Tanaka arrived at the facility on a cold night in December. She was one of the most brilliant physicists humanity had ever produced, and she had no idea why she had been summoned here. The message had come directly from Ambassador Vasquez, retire from your university position. Tell no one where you are going, and prepare to change history. The elevator took her 3 miles underground. When the doors opened, she stepped out into a vast cavern filled with equipment she had never seen before. Hundreds of people moved through the space with purpose, their faces serious and determined. Elena Vasquez waited for her by the entrance. "Dr. Tanaka," she said. "Thank you for coming." "What is this place?" Yuki asked. "This is Project Prometheus." Elena gestured at the cavern around them. "This is humanity's future." "I don't understand." Elena's cold smile returned. "You will. Let me show you something." She led Yuki to a viewing platform overlooking the main floor. Below them, engineers were assembling something massive, a framework of metal and light that hummed with barely contained power. "The elder races have ruled the galaxy for 40,000 years, Elena said. "Do you know why?" "Technology," Yuki guessed. "Resources. Numbers." "No." Elena shook her head. "Complacency. They stopped innovating 10,000 years ago because they didn't need to. They had already conquered everything worth conquering. They had already learned everything worth learning, or so they believed." She turned to face Yuki directly. "Humanity is young. We are hungry. We have spent 300 years catching up to species that had a 40,000-year head start, and we have done it faster than anyone thought possible." Her eyes burned with cold fire. "Imagine what we could accomplish if we stopped trying to catch up and started trying to surpass." Yuki felt a chill run down her spine. "What exactly are you building here?" "A weapon," Elena said simply. "Not a weapon that destroys planets or kills millions. The elder races already have those. No, we're building something different, something that will change the fundamental nature of power in this galaxy." "What kind of weapon?" Elena smiled. "We're going to learn how to move stars." Yuki stared at her. "That's impossible. So was faster than light travel. Once. So was fusion power. So was everything humanity has ever accomplished." Elena put her hand on Yuki's shoulder. "Dr. Tanaka, I am asking you to help me do the impossible. I am asking you to help me build something that will make the elder races remember the day they laughed at us. I am asking you to help me create humanity's vengeance." Yuki looked down at the construction below. She thought of the reports she had read, the Sithrani raids that had killed thousands, the Dromaki trade embargoes that had starved human colonies, the endless, petty cruelties of species who saw humanity as nothing more than insects to be swatted. She thought of her grandmother, who had died in the border wars when Yuki was just a child. She thought of her father, who had worked himself to death trying to build a better life for his family in a galaxy that did not want them. She thought of the laughter in the Great Hall. "What do you need me to do?" she asked. Elena's smile widened. "Welcome to Project Prometheus, Dr. Tanaka. We have a lot of work ahead of us." Far above them, on the surface of a world that had no idea what was being built in its depths, the stars shone cold and distant. They had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations. They had seen empires born and die. They had watched species achieve greatness and fade into nothing. They had never seen anything like what humanity was about to become. The galaxy had made a mistake. It had taken a young species full of fire and potential and pushed them into a corner. It had humiliated them, dismissed them, and then forgotten about them. In the darkness beneath the ice, humanity remembered, and humanity began to prepare. The project would take 100 years. 100 years of sacrifice, of struggle, of pushing the boundaries of what was possible. 100 years of silence from the outside galaxy, which assumed humanity had simply accepted its place among the lesser species. They would learn differently. Elena Vasquez would not live to see the completion of the vengeance engine. Neither would Dr. Tanaka, nor President Chen, nor any of the original architects of humanity's transformation, but their children would continue the work, and their children's children. Generation after generation, united by a single purpose. The elder races had laughed. Humanity would give them something to cry about. In the great hall of the Concord, the Archon's words still echoed. "Go home, human. Know your place." Elena Vasquez's response echoed louder. "You will remember this day." Both were right. Both had no idea how right they were. The humiliation was complete. The silence had begun. And somewhere in the darkness between the stars, the first pieces of the vengeance engine were being assembled. History had been set in motion. There would be no stopping it now. Marcus Chen was 7 years old when his grandmother first took him to see the vengeance engine. The year was 2887, 40 years after humanity had gone silent. The project had moved from the Antarctic facility to somewhere far more ambitious, a hollowed-out moon orbiting a gas giant at the edge of human space. The moon had been given a simple name: Prometheus Station. Marcus held his grandmother's hand as the transport ship approached. Through the viewing window, he could see construction lights twinkling across the moon's surface, thousands of them, like a city built on the face of a dead world. "What is this place, Grandma?" he asked. Elena Vasquez, now over 100 years old and kept alive by the best medical technology humanity could create, smiled down at her grandson. "This is where we build the future," she said. The inside of Prometheus Station was a maze of corridors, laboratories, and construction bays. Marcus saw scientists rushing from one room to another, engineers arguing over holographic displays, and workers hauling equipment through massive tunnels. Everyone moved with purpose. Everyone had somewhere important to be. Elena led him to the heart of the station, a vast chamber at the center of the moon. Marcus stopped in the doorway, his young eyes wide with wonder. The Vengeance engine filled the entire space. It was not finished, that much was clear. Scaffolding surrounded it, and parts of its surface were still exposed metal and wiring. But even incomplete, it was the most incredible thing Marcus had ever seen, a sphere of gleaming technology, half a mile across, pulsing with lights that seemed to dance to a rhythm only it could hear. "It's beautiful," Marcus whispered. "It will be more than beautiful," Elena said. "It will be powerful. More powerful than anything the galaxy has ever seen." "What does it do?" Elena knelt down to his level. Her eyes, still sharp despite her age, looked into his with an intensity that made Marcus's heart beat faster. "Do you know why the elder races are so powerful?" she asked. Marcus nodded. He had learned this in school. Because they control the important places, the planets with resources, the systems with fuel, the locations where trade routes meet. Exactly. Power in this galaxy has always been about location. Whoever controls the right places controls everything. Elena smiled. The Vengeance engine will change that. It will give us the power to move anything, planets, moons, even stars, anywhere we want them. In an instant, Marcus tried to understand. So we could move our planets away from danger? Yes. Or we could move danger toward our enemies. Or we could reshape the entire map of the galaxy to our advantage. Elena stood up. The elder races have spent 40,000 years building their power on the idea that locations are fixed. We are going to prove them wrong. She put her hand on his shoulder. But I will not live to see it finished. Your mother will not live to see it finished. Perhaps even you will not live to see it finished. This project is bigger than any one person, Marcus. It is bigger than any one generation. How long? Marcus asked. At least 60 more years. Perhaps longer. Elena's voice was calm, accepting. The hardest part is not building the machine. The hardest part is finding the final component, something called stellar core matter. It exists only in the hearts of dying stars. And the only dying star we can reach is in Kelvari space. The Kelvari who laughed at us? Yes. Elena's eyes hardened. One day, someone will have to go and take what we need. It will be dangerous. It might be impossible. But without it, the engine will never work. Marcus looked at the massive machine pulsing with light. He thought about what his grandmother had told him, about the humiliation she had suffered, about the laughter that still echoed in humanity's memory. "I'll do it," he said. "When I grow up, I'll lead the mission." Elena laughed softly. "You are brave, little one, just like your grandfather." Her smile faded. "But that mission will not happen for many years. First, you must grow up. You must learn. You must become strong enough to carry this burden." "I will," Marcus promised. Elena looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded. "I believe you," she said. "I believe you will." The years passed. Elena Vasquez died in 2891, at the age of 107. She had spent the last 44 years of her life overseeing the Vengeance Engine project, watching it grow from a desperate dream into something real. Her final words, spoken to her daughter Maria, were simple. "Finish it. For all of us." Maria Chen took over as director of Project Prometheus. Under her leadership, the project accelerated. New breakthroughs in physics allowed the engineers to solve problems that had seemed impossible. The engine grew larger, more powerful, more complete. But there were costs. The project required complete secrecy, which meant complete sacrifice. Scientists could not leave Prometheus Station. Workers could not contact their families on other worlds. Children were raised inside the facility, educated by teachers who had also given up their connections to the outside. Marcus Chen was one of those children. He grew up in the shadow of the engine, learning mathematics and physics and engineering from the best minds humanity had ever produced. He trained his body in the station's military facilities, preparing for a mission that might come in 10 years or might never come at all. He watched his mother grow old under the weight of responsibility, her hair turning gray, her face growing lined with worry and exhaustion. "Why do you keep doing this?" Marcus asked her one night, when he was 25 years old and she was approaching 60. "You never rest. You never stop. What drives you?" Maria looked up from her work, a holographic display showing the engine's latest progress. "Do you know how many people have died for this project?" she asked. Marcus shook his head. 3,412. Accidents, equipment failures, radiation exposure, stress-related illness. 3,000 human beings who gave their lives so that we could build something the universe has never seen. She turned off the display and faced him directly. Every one of them believed in what we're doing. Every one of them chose to sacrifice everything, their safety, their families, their futures for this dream. If I stop, even for a day, I dishonor their memory. I tell the universe that their deaths meant nothing. "But you're killing yourself," Marcus said. "Perhaps," Maria smiled sadly. "But some things are worth dying for. Our ancestors knew this. They suffered and struggled and sacrificed so that we could exist. Now it's our turn to suffer and struggle and sacrifice so that our children can live in a galaxy where humanity is respected, where humanity is feared." She put her hand on his cheek. "I know this life is hard. I know you never asked to carry this burden, but you were born for it, Marcus. You have your grandmother's fire and your grandfather's intelligence. One day, you will lead this project. One day, you will see it finished." Marcus felt the weight of her words settle onto his shoulders. "And what about you?" Maria's smile did not waver. "I will do what I can, for as long as I can. And when I cannot do any more, I will pass the torch to you, and trust that you will carry it further than I ever could." She returned to her work. Marcus watched her for a long moment, then left the room. That night, he dreamed of the great hall of the Concord. He dreamed of the Archon's laughter, of the elder races looking down at humanity like insects beneath their feet. He dreamed of his grandmother standing alone in the center of that hall, her voice cutting through the mockery. "You will remember this day." When he woke, his purpose was clear. Maria Chen died in 2912, at the age of 78. She had served as director for 21 years, pushing the project forward through crisis after crisis. The engine was now 90% complete. Only the stellar core matter remained. Marcus Chen became director at the age of 46. His first act was to accelerate the timeline. His second act was to begin planning the mission that would change everything. "We cannot wait any longer," he told his senior staff. "Every year we delay is another year the elder races have to discover us. Another year they have to prepare for whatever we're building. We need that stellar core matter, and we need it now." "The dying star is in the heart of Kelvari territory," said Dr. James Okonkwo, the mission specialist. "Their security is the best in the galaxy. No one has ever successfully infiltrated a Kelvari harvesting station. Then we will be the first." Marcus's eyes were hard. "My grandmother waited 44 years to see this project begun. My mother waited 21 years to see it nearly finished. I will not wait another decade. I will not pass this burden to my children if I can carry it myself." The mission planning took 5 years. 5 years of gathering intelligence, training teams, and developing technology that could slip past Kelvari sensors. Marcus personally oversaw every detail, sleeping only a few hours each night, driving himself as hard as his mother had driven herself. His wife, Sarah, worried about him. Their daughter, also named Sarah, barely knew her father. He was always working, always planning, always preparing for the day that might never come. "You're missing her childhood," Sarah told him one night. "She's growing up without you." Marcus closed his eyes. "I know," he said. "I hate it. But this is bigger than us, Sarah. This is bigger than any family. Is it? Or is it just revenge disguised as something noble?" The words hit Marcus like a slap. He turned to face his wife. "Do you remember the Sithrani raids? The ones that killed 600,000 people on the colony worlds? Of course, the Concord did nothing. They called it a minor border dispute. 600,000 human beings, men, women, children, and the elder races couldn't even be bothered to condemn it. Marcus's voice shook with controlled anger. This isn't about revenge, Sarah. It's about making sure that never happens again. It's about making the galaxy understand that humanity will not be ignored, will not be dismissed, will not be slaughtered without consequence. Sarah looked at him for a long moment. And if the cost of that is your family, your daughter? Marcus had no answer. He turned back to his work. Sarah left the room. Behind her, Marcus stared at the holographic display showing the engine's status. 94% complete. So close to changing everything. He thought of his grandmother's words, spoken to him when he was just a boy. This project is bigger than any one person. It is bigger than any one generation. He had believed her then. He believed her now. But he had not understood, until this moment, how much those words would cost. The year was 2940. The engine was 98% complete. And Marcus Chen, now 71 years old, was dying. The doctors said it was a combination of things: stress, radiation exposure, decades of pushing himself beyond human limits. They gave him 2 years, maybe 3. Not enough time to see the mission through. You need to choose a successor, Dr. Okonkwo told him. Someone who can lead the final phase. Marcus knew who it had to be. His daughter Sarah was 43 years old now, brilliant and determined, with her grandmother's fire and her mother's steady wisdom. She had grown up in the shadow of the engine, just as Marcus had. She had trained for this, prepared for this, even though she had never asked for it. Just like him, he called her to his quarters. You know why I asked you here? He said. Sarah nodded. Her face was calm, but Marcus could see the storm behind her eyes. I'm not ready, she said. Neither was I. Neither was your grandmother. Neither was any of us. Marcus coughed, his body reminding him of how little time he had left. But ready or not, the moment comes. The mission is scheduled for next year. The team has been trained. Everything is in place. Everything except the stellar core matter. Yes. Marcus looked at his daughter with tired eyes. That's where you come in. I was supposed to oversee the mission myself. Now I'm asking you to do it instead. Sarah was quiet for a long time. What if I fail? She finally asked. Then humanity fails. The engine remains incomplete. The elder races continue to rule the galaxy. And everything we've sacrificed, everyone who has died for this project, will have died for nothing. That's a lot of pressure. Yes, it is. Marcus smiled weakly. Welcome to leadership. Sarah looked at the holographic display behind her father, the engine, nearly complete, waiting for its final piece. Grandmother Elena started this, she said slowly. She was humiliated, and she decided to do something about it. Then she passed the burden to Grandmother Maria, who passed it to you, and now you're passing it to me. Yes, 4 generations of our family, devoted to a single purpose, 100 years of sacrifice. Yes, Sarah met her father's eyes. I won't let them down, she said. I won't let any of them down. Elena, Maria, you, all the people who died to make this possible. Her voice hardened. We're going to finish this. We're going to get that stellar core matter. And we're going to show the galaxy what humanity is capable of. Marcus felt tears on his cheeks, tears of relief, of pride, of hope. That's my girl, he whispered. He died 6 months later, just as the mission team was completing its final preparations. His last words were to his daughter, remember why we're doing this. Remember the laughter. Remember the humiliation. And make them remember us. Sarah Chen, the 4th director of Project Prometheus, stood at the viewing window of the command center and watched the mission ship prepare for departure. It was called the Silent Knife, a stealth vessel unlike anything humanity had ever built, designed to slip through Kelvari space undetected. Aboard it was Commander Yuki Tanaka, granddaughter of the original Dr. Tanaka who had joined the project 100 years ago. She was the best infiltration specialist humanity had ever produced. If anyone could pull off this mission, it was her. Silent Knife, this is Prometheus Command, Sarah said into the comm. You are cleared for departure. Mission parameters confirmed. Target, Kelvari. Harvesting Station 7. Orbital platform around the dying star Velketh. Understood, Command. Yuki's voice came back. Mission timeline is 47 days. Extraction window is 6 hours. If we're not out by then, you'll be out, Sarah said firmly. You have to be. We will be, Yuki said. There was no doubt in her voice. 100 years of preparation, 4 generations of sacrifice. We're not going to fail now. The silent knife powered up its engines. Sarah watched it accelerate away from Prometheus Station, heading toward the border of human space, toward Kelvari territory, toward the dying star that held humanity's future in its heart. Behind her, the Vengeance engine pulsed with light, waiting for its final piece. 100 years of silence. 100 years of preparation. 100 years of sacrifice. The time had come. The galaxy was about to remember humanity, whether it wanted to or not. The dying star Velketh burned with a sickly orange light, its outer layers slowly peeling away into space. In another 10,000 years, it would collapse into a white dwarf. In another million, it would cool to nothing. But right now, in this moment, its heart still held the most valuable substance in the known galaxy. Commander Yuki Tanaka watched the star through the viewport of the silent knife, her face lit by its dying glow. That's a lot of security, said Lieutenant James Okonkwo, her second in command. He was looking at the tactical display, which showed dozens of Kelvari patrol ships circling the harvesting station that orbited the star. More than we expected. The intel was clear, Yuki said. They harvest stellar core matter once every 50 years. The next harvest is in 3 days. Security is always highest during harvest season. So what do we do? Yuki turned to face her team. There were 12 of them in total, the best infiltration specialists humanity had ever trained. Each one had spent years preparing for this mission. Each one knew they might not come back. We stick to the plan, she said. Phase 1. James gets captured. Lieutenant Okonkwo nodded. His expression was calm, but Yuki could see the tension in his shoulders. Getting captured by the Kelvari was not something anyone did voluntarily. Their interrogation methods were legendary for their cruelty. You sure about this? Yuki asked him quietly. I've been sure for 30 years, James said. My grandfather was on the Sithrani border colonies when the raids happened. He was one of the 600,000. My father spent his whole life trying to find justice through proper channels, working with the Concord, trying to make them care. He shook his head. They never did. So now we do things differently. Yuki put her hand on his shoulder. We'll get you out. I promise. I know you will. James smiled. And if you don't, make sure the mission succeeds anyway. That's what matters. That's what's always mattered. He headed to the shuttle bay. Yuki watched him go, then turned to the rest of her team. All right, everyone. You know your roles. Phase 1 begins in 6 hours. Once James is captured, we'll have a narrow window to infiltrate the station, while the Kelvari are focused on him. Phase 2 is the extraction of the stellar core matter. Phase 3 is getting out alive. What about Phase 4? Asked Sergeant Chen, no relation to Director Chen, though the name was common enough in the project. Phase 4 is we all go home heroes. Yuki allowed herself a small smile. Any questions? No one spoke. Good. Get some rest. It's going to be a long few days. The capture went exactly as planned. James flew a small scout ship directly into Kelvari space, making no attempt to hide. Within minutes, patrol vessels had surrounded him. His ship was disabled, boarded, and he was taken prisoner. The Kelvari were curious. No human had entered their space in 100 years. Why was this one here now? What did he want? They brought him to their command station orbiting Velketh, a massive structure of dark metal and harsh angles, built to withstand the radiation of the dying star. James was taken to an interrogation chamber deep in the station's core, where the Archon's nephew, a Kelvari named Kethvar, waited for him. Kethvar was smaller than most Kelvari, but his compound eyes held a cruel intelligence that made James's skin crawl. He circled the human slowly, studying him like a scientist examining an interesting specimen. A human, Kethvar said. How fascinating. We had almost forgotten your species existed. That was the idea, James said. Indeed. 100 years of silence. 100 years of hiding in your little corner of space. Kethvar leaned close. And now you return. Why? Curiosity. Kethvar made a sound that might have been laughter. You expect me to believe that a human traveled hundreds of light years into Kelvari space, past dozens of security checkpoints. Just out of curiosity? Believe what you want. The first blow came without warning, a backhand that sent James sprawling across the floor. He tasted blood in his mouth. I have studied your species, Kethvar said calmly. You are resilient. You can withstand a great deal of pain. But everyone breaks eventually. Everyone tells their secrets. He leaned down. What is humanity planning? Why did you really come here? James spat blood on the floor. We never left, he said. We were just preparing. Kethvar's compound eyes narrowed. Preparing for what? James smiled through bloody teeth. You'll find out. The interrogation continued for hours. Kethvar used every technique in the Kelvari arsenal. Physical pain, psychological manipulation, drugs that made James see his worst nightmares come to life. Through it all, James said nothing useful. He gave them false coordinates, fake project names, invented stories about human rebellions and civil wars. He bought his team 6 hours. 6 hours to do the impossible. While James endured torture in the command station, the silent knife crept toward the harvesting platform on the other side of Velketh. The platform was a marvel of engineering, a vast ring of equipment designed to extract matter from the core of the dying star itself. It was also heavily defended, with shields, weapons, and security systems that had been perfected over millennia. But the Kelvari, for all their advanced technology, had one weakness: arrogance. They could not imagine that anyone would dare to attack them. They could not conceive of a threat from the clever vermin they had dismissed a century ago. That arrogance would cost them everything. Yuki led her team through the platform's maintenance tunnels, spaces so cramped that even the smaller Kelvari avoided them. The humans, with their compact bodies, fit perfectly. They moved in silence, cutting through security doors with tools that left no trace, bypassing sensor systems that had never been designed to detect human technology. It took 4 hours to reach the harvesting chamber. The chamber was the size of a small city, dominated by a massive apparatus that extended down toward the star's surface. In the center of the apparatus, suspended in a containment field, was a crystal the size of a human fist. Stellar core matter, the heart of a dying star, compressed into a form that could be held in one hand. The final component of the vengeance engine. Beautiful, whispered Sergeant Chen. Focus, Yuki said. We have 2 hours before James's window closes. Let's get this done. The extraction was the most delicate part of the mission. The containment field had to be disabled without triggering alarms. The crystal had to be removed without destabilizing it. Every step required perfect precision. Yuki's hands moved with practiced ease. She had trained for this moment for 20 years, ever since her grandmother had first told her about the project, about the sacrifice, about the dream of a humanity that would never be humiliated again. Field disabled, she reported. Beginning extraction. She reached into the containment unit and closed her fingers around the crystal. It was warm to the touch, pulsing with the compressed energy of a star. For a moment, she felt the weight of everything it represented: 100 years of work, 4 generations of sacrifice, the hopes of 8 billion human beings. Got it, she said. Alarms began to scream. Move, Yuki shouted. The team sprinted back through the maintenance tunnels, the crystal secured in a shielded case on Yuki's back. Behind them, they could hear Kelvari security forces mobilizing. Doors began to seal. Weapons began to power up. They're trying to lock down the station, Sergeant Chen reported, his voice tight with controlled panic. We knew this might happen. Yuki pushed herself to run faster. Stay focused. Stay together. They burst out of the tunnels into a cargo bay near the platform's edge. The silent knife was supposed to be waiting for them, hidden in the shadow of a support strut. But when Yuki looked, she saw only empty space. Knife, what's your status? She called into her comm. Commander, we had to move. The pilot's voice was strained. Kelvari patrol spotted us. We're circling around, but we're under fire. ETA 15 minutes. 15 minutes. An eternity. When you were being hunted. Find cover, Yuki ordered. We hold this position until extraction. The firefight began 30 seconds later. Kelvari soldiers poured into the cargo bay, insectoid warriors in heavy armor, carrying weapons that could punch through starship hulls. Yuki's team took cover behind cargo containers, returning fire with their own weapons. The noise was deafening, the air filled with smoke and the smell of burning metal. We can't hold them, Sergeant Chen shouted. A blast had taken off his left arm, but he was still fighting, his face pale with shock and determination. There's too many. Yuki looked at her team. 8 left now, 3 of them wounded. The silent knife was still 12 minutes away, and more Kelvari were arriving every moment. She thought of her grandmother, who had devoted her life to Project Prometheus. She thought of Director Chen, who had died believing the mission would succeed. She thought of James, still enduring torture somewhere in the command station, buying them time they no longer had. She thought of the crystal on her back, the hope of all humanity. Everyone, listen to me, she said. Her voice was calm, steady. I need you to get to the extraction point and wait for the knife. I'll stay here and hold them off. Commander, no. That's an order. Yuki met each of their eyes in turn. The mission is more important than any one person. I can buy you the time you need, but only if you go now. Sergeant Chen grabbed her arm with his remaining hand. Yuki, you can't. I can. And I will. She pressed the shielded case into his hands. Get this to Director Chen. Tell her we kept our promise. She pushed him away and turned to face the incoming Kelvari. Go, she screamed. The team ran. Behind them, Yuki stood alone in the cargo bay, her weapon raised, her face lit by the dying light of Velketh. She thought of her grandmother, who had spent her whole life preparing for a future she would never see. She thought of her father, who had worked himself to death in the service of a dream. She thought of everyone who had sacrificed everything for this moment. For my family, she whispered. The first wave of Kelvari reached her. For humanity, she fired. The battle lasted 7 minutes. 7 minutes of pure, desperate violence, as one human woman held off an army of alien warriors with nothing but courage and fury. She killed dozens of them before they finally overwhelmed her. Her body riddled with wounds, her weapon drained of power, but 7 minutes was enough. The silent knife appeared just as the last of Yuki's team reached the extraction point. Sergeant Chen was hauled aboard, the shielded case clutched to his chest. The ship accelerated away from the platform, its engines screaming as it fled Kelvari space. Behind them, the harvesting platform erupted in chaos. Kethvar, informed of the theft, ordered every ship in the system to pursue. But the silent knife was built for exactly this situation, fast, maneuverable, and equipped with stealth technology the Kelvari had never seen. By the time they reached the border of human space, they had lost their pursuers. Sergeant Chen sat alone in the cargo bay, the shielded case in his lap. Yuki's final transmission still rang in his ears. For my family, for humanity. He opened a channel to Prometheus Station. Director Chen, he said, his voice hoarse. This is Sergeant Chen. Mission accomplished. We have the stellar core matter. There was a long pause. Then Sarah Chen's voice came through, thick with emotion. Casualties? 4 dead during the firefight. Commander Tanaka. Chen's voice broke. Commander Tanaka stayed behind to buy us time. She's gone. Another long pause. She was a hero, Sarah said finally. They all were. Yes, ma'am. What about Lieutenant Okonkwo? Still in Kelvari custody, as far as we know. The mission extracted before we could reach him. Sarah was quiet for a moment. He knew the risks. He accepted them. Her voice hardened. Get that crystal home, Sergeant. We'll honor their sacrifice by finishing what they started. Yes, ma'am. The silent knife limped toward Prometheus Station, carrying the final component of humanity's vengeance. Behind them, the dying star Velketh continued to burn, unaware that its heart had been stolen. In Kelvari space, Kethvar stared at the reports in disbelief. A small team of humans had infiltrated the most secure facility in his territory, stolen the most valuable substance in the galaxy, and escaped. It should have been impossible. It was impossible, and yet it had happened. He looked at the human prisoner, James Okonkwo, who hung in his restraints with a bloody smile on his face. What have you done? Kethvar demanded. James coughed, blood spattering his lips. We kept our promise, he said. We made sure you would remember us. Kethvar struck him again, but there was no satisfaction in it. Something had changed. Something fundamental had shifted in the balance of power. He didn't know what humanity had taken, or why they wanted it. But he knew, with absolute certainty, that the galaxy would never be the same. He sent an emergency transmission to the Concord. The humans have returned. They have taken something from us. I do not know what they are planning, But I believe we should be afraid. For the first time in 40,000 years, the elder races listened. For the first time in 40,000 years, they felt the cold touch of fear. On Prometheus Station, Director Sarah Chen held the crystal in her hands. It pulsed with warmth, with power, with the compressed fury of a dying star. "Begin final integration," she ordered, "and open a channel to the Concorde." She looked at the Vengeance engine complete at last, ready to reshape the galaxy itself. It's time they learned what they created. The transmission reached every world in the galaxy at the same moment. On Varthex Prime, where the Concorde still met in their crystal towers, the broadcast interrupted a trade negotiation. On Kelvari homeworld, it appeared on every screen in every hive city. On Sithrani colony worlds, Dromaki mining stations, Velquin energy platforms everywhere, the face of a human woman appeared. Director Sarah Chen looked out at a galaxy that had forgotten her species existed. "My name is Sarah Chen," she said. "I speak for humanity." In the Great Hall of the Concorde, the Archon, a descendant of the one who had laughed at Elena Vasquez a century ago, leaned forward on his throne. Around him, representatives of the 12 elder races watched the broadcast with expressions ranging from confusion to contempt. 100 years ago, Sarah continued, "my great-grandmother stood in your great hall and asked for humanity to be recognized as equals. You laughed at her. You called us vermin. You told us to know our place." The Archon remembered the story. It was a minor footnote in Kelvari history, the day a primitive species had been put in its rightful place. He had not thought about it in decades. "We went silent," Sarah said. "We closed our borders. We disappeared from your sight. And you forgot about us." She smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. That was a mistake. The image changed. The galaxy saw the Vengeance engine for the first time, a sphere of light and power, pulsing with energy that made the fabric of space itself ripple. "This is what we built during our silence," Sarah said. 100 years of work, 4 generations of sacrifice, thousands of lives given to a single purpose. The elder races stared at the image. They did not understand what they were seeing, but they understood it was dangerous. They understood it was power. "Let me show you what it does." The image changed again. Now it showed a small moon orbiting a gas giant, a moon that the elder races had never seen, in a system that had been marked as uninhabited. "Watch carefully," Sarah said. The engine pulsed with light. Space itself seemed to bend around the moon, and then the moon vanished. One moment it was there. The next moment, it was gone. No explosion, no debris, just gone. Before anyone could react, the image shifted to show a different star system, one on the opposite side of the galaxy. The moon appeared. It had been moved, instantly, across tens of thousands of light years, as easily as a human might move a piece on a game board. The Great Hall erupted in chaos. "Impossible!" the Sithrani representative shrieked. "That's impossible. Spatial displacement at that scale would require technology beyond anything the galaxy has ever seen." Sarah finished for them. "Yes, we know." The Archon rose from his throne, his compound eyes fixed on the image of the engine. "This is a bluff," he said, though his voice lacked conviction. "A trick. No species could build such a thing." "You're right," Sarah agreed. "No species could. No species had the motivation. No species had the desperation." Her voice hardened. "But you gave us those things. You gave us a century to prepare. You gave us a reason to push the boundaries of what was possible." She leaned forward. "And now we can move anything. Planets, moons, stars." Her smile returned. "I could move your homeworld into the heart of a supernova. I could drop a dying star into your most populated system. I could reshape the entire map of the galaxy with a thought." The hall was silent. For the first time in 40,000 years, the elder races had nothing to say. "But I'm not going to do any of those things," Sarah said. "Not yet. First, I want you to understand something." She stood back, revealing the full scope of the engine behind her. "You had 40,000 years. 40,000 years to build a civilization, to develop technology, to secure your power. And in that time, you became comfortable. You became complacent. You stopped innovating, stopped pushing, stopped dreaming. You looked at younger species like us and saw only threats to be contained." Her voice dropped. "We had 100 years, a single century fueled by humiliation and rage, and we built something that makes all of your weapons, all of your fleets, all of your power, Meaningless. The Archon found his voice at last. "What do you want?" he asked. The question came out as a whisper. "I want you to remember," Sarah said. "I want you to remember the day you laughed at us. I want you to remember every insult, every dismissal, every act of cruelty toward a species you considered beneath your notice." She paused. "And then I want you to face the consequences." The transmission ended. For a long moment, no one in the Great Hall moved. Then the Archon turned to his military commanders. "Mobilize every fleet," he ordered. "Every ship, every weapon, every soldier. We attack human space immediately." "Archon," one of his advisors said carefully, "perhaps we should negotiate." "Negotiate?" The Archon's voice was sharp with fear disguised as anger. "They have just threatened our existence. They have built a weapon that could destroy us all. We must strike now, before they can use it." The other elder races agreed. 12 fleets were assembled, the largest military force the galaxy had ever seen. Millions of ships, billions of soldiers, weapons capable of cracking planets and boiling oceans. The elder races had not survived for 40,000 years by showing weakness. They would crush humanity before this threat could grow. The first Kelvari fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of human space. Admiral Kethvar, the same Kelvari who had interrogated James Okonkwo, commanded from the bridge of his flagship. Around him, 10,000 warships prepared for battle. "All ships, advance," Kethvar ordered. "Target, the human colony world, Elysium Prime. We will make an example of them." The fleet accelerated toward the planet, and found nothing. Elysium Prime was gone. The entire planet had simply vanished. Where it had been, there was only empty space, and the confused sensor readings of ships that had expected to find a world. "What?" Kethvar stared at the empty void. "Where is it?" "Admiral!" A sensor officer's voice was high with panic. "We're detecting spatial distortion directly ahead." Space tore open. A star appeared. Not a small star. Not a distant star. A massive blue giant, suddenly occupying the space where Elysium Prime had been. Its gravity seized the Kelvari fleet and began dragging ships toward its surface. Its radiation flooded their shields. Overwhelming systems designed to withstand almost anything. "Emergency jump!" Kethvar screamed. "All ships, emergency jump!" Most of the fleet escaped. Most. 3,000 ships were pulled into the star's gravity well, crushed by its impossible mass, vaporized by its light. 3,000 ships lost in seconds, and the humans had not fired a single weapon. The other fleets fared no better. The Sithrani fleet emerged from FTL to find itself inside a dense asteroid field that had not existed moments before. The Dromaki fleet discovered that its target system had been replaced with a black hole. The Velquin fleet, beings of pure energy, found themselves trapped in a spatial pocket where the laws of physics had been subtly altered in ways that made their energy forms unstable. One by one, the elder race's fleets were destroyed or scattered, not by conventional weapons, not by armies or battles, by the fundamental reshaping of reality itself. The war lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the conquered had lost over 60% of its combined military power. The elder races had been humiliated, broken, defeated by an enemy they had dismissed as vermin, and humanity had not lost a single ship. Sarah Chen watched the battle reports come in from her command center. She felt no joy, no satisfaction, only a grim sense of necessity. "The Concorde is requesting communication," her aide reported. "Put them through." The Archon's face appeared on her screen. He looked different now. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something Sarah had never expected to see in a Kelvari. "Fear, Director Chen," he said. His voice was hoarse. We wish to discuss terms." Sarah nodded slowly. "I'm listening. We acknowledge humanity's power. We accept that we underestimated you. We are prepared to offer you a seat on the Council of 12. Equal status. Full recognition. That's not enough." The Archon's compound eyes widened. "What more could you want? We are offering you everything. Everything your ancestor asked for 100 years ago." "My ancestor asked for recognition as equals," Sarah said. "That offer expired the moment you laughed at her." She leaned forward. "Here are my terms. First, the Concorde is dissolved. Each species governs itself. No more councils of elders ruling the galaxy. That's..." The Archon's voice trailed off. "Second, human space is recognized as sovereign and inviolate. No elder race ship enters our territory without explicit permission, ever. We can accept that. Third, every species in this galaxy will publicly acknowledge what was done to humanity. The humiliation, the raids, the dismissal, all of it, and they will acknowledge what humanity chose not to do in return. The Archon stared at her. You could have destroyed us, he said slowly. You have the power. You could have wiped out every species that ever wronged you. Yes. Why didn't you? Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Because that would make us what you accused us of being, she finally said. Vermin. Animals. Creatures driven by instinct and rage. She shook her head. We're better than that. We've always been better than that. We just needed the power to prove it. She stood. Accept my terms, Archon, or I will move your homeworld into the void between galaxies, where your people will float alone in the darkness for eternity. The Archon closed his eyes. We accept, he whispered. The news spread across the galaxy within hours. The Conquered was dissolved. The elder races were stripped of their power. Humanity, the species that had been mocked and dismissed, was now the most powerful force in known space. On world after world, alien species watched in disbelief as the old order crumbled. Some celebrated, freed from the rule of beings who had dominated them for millennia. Some mourned, losing the stability they had known their entire lives. And some trembled, wondering what this new power would do with its strength. On Prometheus Station, Sarah Chen sat alone in her quarters. The battle was won. The terms had been accepted. Humanity had achieved everything it had worked toward for 100 years. So why did she feel so empty? There was a knock at her door. Come in, she said. Her daughter entered, Elena Chen, named for her great-great-grandmother. She was 18 years old, with her mother's dark hair and her father's quiet strength. They're asking for you, Elena said. The fleet commanders want to celebrate. I know. Elena sat down across from her mother. You don't look like someone who just won a war. Sarah smiled tiredly. Your great-great-grandmother started all this because she was humiliated. Your great-grandmother continued it because she believed in justice. Your grandfather continued it because he wanted to protect us. And I finished it because I had to. She looked at her hands. But I wonder, sometimes, if we lost something along the way. 100 years of rage. 4 generations devoted to a single purpose. How much of ourselves did we sacrifice to reach this moment? Elena was quiet for a long moment. I think, she said slowly, that what matters now is what we do next. Sarah looked up. What do you mean? We have power that no species has ever had. We can move stars. We can reshape the galaxy. We can do anything we want. Elena met her mother's eyes. So the question is, what do we want? Do we become oppressors, like the ones who laughed at us? Or do we become something better? Sarah stared at her daughter. In that moment, she saw Elena Vasquez's fire, Maria Chen's determination, Marcus Chen's sacrifice, all of it, distilled into a young woman who had never known the humiliation but understood its cost. Something better, Sarah said softly. That's what your great-great-grandmother would have wanted. That's what they all would have wanted. She stood up. Come on, let's go celebrate. And tomorrow we start building something new. On Varth X Prime, in the Great Hall of the Concord, the Archon knelt before a human ambassador. The ambassador was young, barely 30 years old, but she carried herself with an authority that transcended age. Her name was Elena Chen, great-great-granddaughter of the woman who had been laughed at in this very hall a century ago. How? The Archon whispered. How did you become this? Elena looked down at him with an expression that mixed pity with something else, something that might have been compassion. You made us, she said. You laughed at us when we asked for respect. You called us vermin when we wanted to be partners. You pushed us into a corner and forgot about us. She paused. But you forgot something important about cornered animals. They don't give up. They don't accept their fate. They fight. They adapt. They become something new. She turned to leave, then stopped at the door. Remember this day, she said. Remember what humanity is capable of. And remember that we chose mercy when we could have chosen destruction. The Archon remained on his knees long after she was gone. In the silence of the Great Hall, surrounded by the statues of founders who had ruled the galaxy for 40,000 years, he finally understood. Humanity had not just won a war, they had ended an era, and a new era was beginning, an era shaped by the very species the galaxy had dismissed as worthless. The clever vermin had inherited the stars, and the galaxy would never be the same. 3 years after the reckoning, the galaxy was still adjusting to the new order. The former elder races had scattered to their homeworlds, stripped of the power they had held for 40,000 years. Some had accepted their new reality with quiet dignity, others had raged against it, launching small rebellions that were quickly crushed, and a very few, had begun to wonder if perhaps they had deserved what happened to them. On Earth, in the city of Geneva, Director Sarah Chen faced the hardest decision of her life. The chamber was packed with humanity's most powerful leaders, military commanders, political figures, scientists, and ordinary citizens who had earned the right to be heard. They had come to debate the future of the Vengeance Engine. "We should use it," General Martinez said flatly. He was a large man with scars on his face from the old border wars. "We have the power to reshape the galaxy. We should use it to ensure humanity's dominance forever." "And become what they were?" asked Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the daughter of Commander Tanaka, who had died to retrieve the stellar core matter. "Oppressors? Tyrants? My mother didn't sacrifice herself so we could become monsters. Your mother sacrificed herself so humanity would survive," Martinez shot back. "And the only way to guarantee our survival is to make sure no one can ever threaten us again." "By threatening everyone else?" The argument continued, voices rising, tempers flaring. Sarah let it go on for a while. Watching, listening, she saw fear in some faces. Fear that humanity would lose its advantage. Fear that the elder races would someday recover and seek revenge. She saw anger in others, anger at decades of humiliation, demanding that the galaxy pay for every insult. And she saw hope. Quiet, fragile hope that humanity could be something more than its enemies had been. Finally, she raised her hand. The room fell silent. "I've made a decision," she said. Everyone leaned forward. "The Vengeance Engine's blueprints will be released to every species in the galaxy." The room exploded. General Martinez was on his feet, shouting about treason. Others were demanding explanations. Even those who opposed using the engine for dominance looked shocked. Sarah waited for the noise to die down. "Listen to me," she said. "All of you. Listen. I've spent my entire life with this project. My grandmother started it. My mother continued it. My father gave his life for it. I know what it represents. I know what it cost." She looked around the room. "And I know what it could become." She walked to the window, looking out at the city below. Geneva had been rebuilt after the Sithrani raids 50 years ago. New buildings stood where old ones had been destroyed. Life went on. For 100 years, we worked in secret. We built something terrible because we were afraid, because we were angry, because we had no other choice. And when we finally used it, we proved that we were stronger than those who had mocked us. She turned back to face the room. "But strength isn't power. Strength is what you do with power. If we keep the engine for ourselves," she continued, "we become exactly what the Concord was, a small group holding absolute power over everyone else. And eventually, someone will do to us what we did to them. They'll resent us. They'll fear us. They'll spend generations planning our downfall." She shook her head. "I won't let that happen. I won't let my children inherit a galaxy of enemies waiting for their chance to strike." "So what do you suggest?" Dr. Tanaka asked quietly. "I suggest we change the game entirely." Sarah pulled up a holographic display showing the engine's blueprints. "If everyone has this technology, no one can use it for domination. If every species can move stars, then the old rules of power based on controlling locations become meaningless. We create a galaxy where strength comes from cooperation, not conquest." "That's naive," General Martinez said. "Some species will use it for war. Maybe. But they'll face opponents who can fight back equally. And eventually, they'll realize what we realize, that there are better ways to resolve conflicts than destruction." She looked at the general directly. "Or we can keep the engine for ourselves, become the galaxy's new oppressors, and wait for the inevitable rebellion that will tear everything down. Those are our choices." The debate continued for 3 more days. In the end, the vote was close, but Sarah's proposal won. The blueprints of the Vengeance Engine were transmitted to every species in the known galaxy. The reaction was immediate and chaotic. Some species tried to use the technology for conquest. The Kelvari, still bitter over their defeat, built their own engine and attempted to move humanity's capital world into a black hole. They discovered that Earth had already been relocated to a secret location, and that their homeworld was now surrounded by human-aligned forces who had seen their attack coming. Other species panicked, convinced that the galaxy would descend into chaos. They built their engines for defense, creating protective barriers around their worlds, ready to flee at the first sign of threat. But something unexpected happened. The chaos didn't come. For the first years, there were incidents. Small wars, territorial disputes, attempts at aggression. But each time, the attackers found that their targets could fight back equally. Each time, the cost of conflict proved greater than the potential gain. Slowly, the galaxy began to change. Species that had never cooperated before formed alliances. Trade routes opened between worlds that had been enemies for millennia. Cultural exchanges began as beings who had only known each other as threats discovered they had more in common than they had imagined. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't peaceful. But it was different. It was hope. A century passed. The year was 3050. On the crystal world of Varthex Prime, in the same chamber where humanity had been humiliated 200 years ago, a monument stood. The monument depicted Ambassador Elena Vasquez, the first Elena, the one who had started it all. She was carved in white stone, her face calm and dignified, her eyes looking forward toward a future she would never see. Beneath her feet, an inscription in 1,000 languages read, "You will remember this day," and below that added later in smaller letters, "We chose to remember it differently." Every year, on the anniversary of the humiliation, representatives from hundreds of species gathered at the monument to reflect on what had happened and what had changed. Some came out of respect, some came out of guilt, some came simply to witness history. This year, a young Kelvari child named Kethlara was among the visitors. She was only 10 years old, her compound eyes still bright with curiosity, her mind not yet shaped by the prejudices of her elders. She stood before the monument, staring up at the human woman frozen in stone. "Teacher," she said, tugging at the sleeve of the being beside her. Her teacher was human, a middle-aged man named David Chen, descended from the same family that had led humanity through its transformation. He was one of thousands of human educators who had volunteered to work with other species, sharing knowledge and building bridges across the old divisions. "Yes, Kethlara, why is this statue important?" David knelt down to her level, his eyes meeting her compound gaze. "This statue shows a woman named Elena Vasquez. A long time ago, before you were born, she came to this very place and asked the leaders of the galaxy to treat humanity as equals. Do you know what they did?" Kethlara shook her head. "They laughed at her. They called humans names and said they would never be important." The young Kelvari's antennae twitched with confusion. "But humans are important now. Everyone learns about human science and human art. My mother says humans helped save our world during the Great Migration." "That's right. But it wasn't always that way." David gestured at the monument. "After Elena was laughed at, humanity went away for a long time, 100 years. And during that time, they built something powerful, something that could have been used to destroy everyone who had mocked them. But they didn't destroy anyone," Kethlara said. "We learned about this in school. The humans won the war but let everyone live." "That's right. And do you know why?" Kethlara thought about it. "Because destroying people is wrong?" David smiled. "Partly, but also because the humans realized something important. They realized that being strong doesn't mean hurting others. It means having the power to hurt others and choosing not to." He pointed at the inscription beneath Elena's feet. "You will remember this day," he read. That's what Elena said when she left this hall, after being humiliated. It was a promise, a warning, and humanity kept that promise. They made the galaxy remember them. He pointed at the second inscription. But then they added this: "We chose to remember it differently." Do you understand what that means? Kethlara thought for a long moment. It means they could have been angry forever, but they decided to be something else instead? David's smile widened. Exactly. They could have held on to their pain, their rage, their desire for revenge. They could have used their power to make everyone suffer the way they had suffered, but instead, they chose to let go of the anger and build something better. He stood up, looking at the statue of Elena Vasquez with something like reverence. A very wise person once said that you can turn pain into power, but wisdom is choosing what kind of power it becomes. Humanity chose to turn their pain into the power to change, to grow, to help others. And that's why this statue is important. Kethlara looked up at the monument, her young eyes seeing it differently now. Not just a statue of a human, but a symbol of something larger, a reminder that even the deepest wounds could heal, that even the worst enemies could become friends, that even a century of rage could give way to something better. Teacher, she said, yes, when I grow up, I want to be like her, like Elena. I want to be brave enough to ask for things even when people laugh at me, and I want to be strong enough to forgive them when they stop laughing. David felt tears in his eyes. He had been teaching for 20 years, but he had never heard a student say something so profound. I think Elena would have liked that, he said. I think she would have been proud. They stood together in silence for a while, the human teacher and the Kelvari child, looking up at the monument to a woman who had changed the galaxy by refusing to let hatred consume her. Around them, other visitors moved through the hall. Sithrani scholars studying the inscriptions, Dromaki artists sketching the statue, Velquin beings of light pulsing with colors that meant respect and remembrance, species that had once been enemies, now standing side by side. This was Elena Vasquez's true legacy, not the vengeance engine, not the defeat of the Concord, not even humanity's rise to power. Her legacy was this moment, this hall full of beings who had learned, slowly and painfully, to see each other as something more than threats. Her legacy was a galaxy that had finally begun to grow up, far away, on a world that had no name on any map. Sarah Chen lived out her final years in peace. She had retired from public life decades ago, leaving the work of building the new galactic civilization to younger generations. Her daughter Elena had led humanity through the transition, and her granddaughter, another Elena, the fifth in the line, now served as one of the architects of the Interspecies Council that had replaced the Concord. But sometimes, late at night, Sarah would go outside and look up at the stars. And she would remember. She remembered her father, working himself to death for a dream. She remembered her grandmother, dying with the word finish on her lips. She remembered Commander Tanaka, staying behind to buy time for the mission. She remembered Lieutenant Okonkwo, enduring torture so that others could escape. She remembered all of them, the thousands who had sacrificed everything so that humanity could reach this moment, and she wondered if they would be proud of what humanity had become. She hoped so. She believed so. But some questions could never be answered with certainty. All she knew was that they had made a choice, back at the beginning, a choice to respond to humiliation with determination instead of despair, a choice to build instead of destroy, a choice to become something the galaxy had never seen. And in the end, that choice had changed everything. On the last night of her life, Sarah Chen looked up at the stars and smiled. "We did it, grandmother," she whispered. "We made them remember." And somewhere, in the space between stars, she could almost hear Elena Vasquez whisper back, "I know, I never doubted you would." Sarah closed her eyes and let go. The stars continued to shine, as they always had. But now, they shone on a different galaxy. A galaxy that had learned, through pain and sacrifice, and the stubborn hope of a species that refused to be broken, that the greatest power of all was not the ability to destroy, it was the ability to choose. And humanity, the clever vermin who had once been laughed at in the Great Hall of the Concord, had chosen wisely. They had chosen to remember. They had chosen to forgive. They had chosen to become something more than their pain. And in doing so, they had inherited not just the stars, but the future itself. This was the true completion of the vengeance engine, not a weapon that could move worlds, but a choice that could change them. And the galaxy would never forget.